Chapter 33 of Colonel Quaritch, V.C. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Colonel Quaritch, V.C. by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 33. The Squire Speaks His Mind. For a minute or more her father fidgeted about, moving his papers backward and forward, but said nothing. At last he spoke. "You have taken a most serious and painful step, Ida," he said. "Of course you have a right to do as you please. You are of full age, and I cannot expect that you will consider me or your family in your matrimonial engagements. But at the same time I think that it is my duty to point out to you what it is that you are doing. You are refusing one of the finest matches in England in order to marry a broken-down, middle-aged, half-pay colonel, a man who can hardly support you, whose part in life is played, or is apparently too idle to seek another." Here Ida's eyes flashed ominously, but she made no comment, being apparently afraid to trust herself to speak. "You are doing this," went on her father, working himself up as he spoke, "in the face of my wishes, and with the knowledge that your action will bring your family, to say nothing of your father, to utter and irretrievable ruin." "Surely, father, surely," broke in Ida almost in a cry, "you would not have me marry one man when I love another. When I made the promise I had not become attached to Colonel Quaritch." "Love, pshaw!" said her father. "Don't talk to me in that sentimental and schoolgirl way. You are too old for it. I am a plain man, and I believe in family affection and in duty, Ida. Love, as you call it, is only too often another word for self-will and selfishness and other things that we are better off without." "I can understand, father," answered Ida, struggling to keep her temper under this jobation, "that my refusal to marry Mr. Cossey is disagreeable to you for obvious reasons, though it is not so very long ago that you detested him yourself. But I do not see why an honest woman's affection for another man should be talked of as though there were something shameful about it. It is all very well to sneer at love, but after all a woman is flesh and blood. She is not chattel or a slave girl, and marriage is not like anything else. It means, as you must know, many things to a woman. There is no magic about marriage to make that which is unrighteous righteous, or that which is impure pure." "There," said her father, "it is no good your lecturing me on marriage, Ida. If you do not want to marry Cossey, I can't force you to. If you want to ruin me and your family and yourself, you must do so. But there is one thing, while it is over me, which I suppose will not be for much longer. My house is my own, and I will not have that colonel of yours hanging about it, and I shall write to him to say so. You are your own mistress, and if you choose to walk over to church and marry him you can do so, but it will be done without my consent, which of course, however, is an unnecessary formality. Do you hear me, Ida?" "If you have quite done, father," she answered coldly, "I should like to go before I say something which I might be sorry for. Of course you can write what you like to Colonel Quaritch, and I shall write to him too." Her father made no answer beyond sitting down at his table and grabbing viciously at a pen. So she left the room, indignant indeed, but with as heavy a heart as any woman could well carry in her breast. "Dear Sir," wrote the not altogether unnaturally indignant Squire, "I have been informed by my daughter of her entanglement with you. It is one which, for reasons that I need not enter into, is most distasteful to me, as well as, I am sorry to say, ruinous to Ida herself and to her family. Ida is of full age and must of course do as she pleases with herself, but I cannot consent to become a party to what I disapprove of so strongly, and this being the case, I must beg you to cease your visits to this house. I am, sir, your obedient servant, James de la Molle, Colonel Quaritch." Ida, as soon as she had sufficiently recovered herself, also wrote to the Colonel. She told him the whole story, keeping nothing back, and ended her letter thus: "Never, dear Harold, was a woman in a greater difficulty, and never have I more needed help and advice. You know, and have good reason to know, how hateful this marriage should be to me, loving you as I do entirely and alone, and having no higher desire than to become your wife. But of course I see the painfulness of the position. I am not so selfish as my father believes, or says that he believes. I quite understand how great would be the material advantage to my father if I could bring myself to marry Mr. Cossey. You may remember that I told you once that I thought that no woman had a right to prefer her own happiness to the prosperity of her whole family. But, Harold, it is easy to speak this, and very, very hard to act to it. What am I to do? What am I to do? And yet how can I, in common fairness, ask you to answer that question? God help us both, Harold. Is there no way out of it? These letters were both duly received by Harold Quaritch on the following morning, and threw him into a fever of anxiety and doubt. He was a just and reasonable man, and knowing something of human nature under the circumstances, did not altogether wonder at the Squire's violence and irritation. The financial position of the de la Molle family was little, if anything, short of desperate, and he could easily understand how maddening it must be to a man like the Squire, who loved Honham, which had for centuries been the habitation of his race, better than he loved anything on earth, to suddenly realise that it must pass away from him and his for ever, merely because a woman happened to prefer one man to another, and that man, to his view, the less eligible of the two. So keenly did he realise this, indeed, that he greatly doubted whether or no he was justified in continuing his advances to Ida. Finally, after much thought, he wrote to the Squire as follows: I have received your letter, and also one from Ida, and I hope you will believe me when I say that I quite understand and sympathise with the motives which evidently led you to write it. I am unfortunately, although I never regretted it till now, a poor man, whereas my rival suitor is a very rich one. I shall, of course, strictly obey your injunctions, and moreover I can assure you that, whatever my own feelings may be in the matter, I shall do nothing, either directly or indirectly, to influence Ida's ultimate decision. She must decide for herself. To Ida he wrote at length. Dearest Ida, he ended, I can say nothing more. You must judge for yourself, and I shall accept your decision loyally, whatever it may be. It is unnecessary for me now to tell you how inextricably my happiness in life is interwoven with that decision, but at the same time I do not wish to influence it. It certainly, to my mind, does not seem right that a woman should be driven into sacrificing her whole life to secure any monetary advantage, either for herself or for others. But then the world is full of things that are not right. I can give you no advice, for I do not know what advice I ought to give. I try to put myself out of the question and to consider you and you only, but even then I feel that my judgment is not impartial. At any rate, the less we see of each other the better at present, for I do not wish to appear to be taking any undue advantage. If we are destined to pass our lives together, this temporary estrangement will not matter, and if, on the other hand, we are doomed to a lifelong separation, the sooner we begin the better. It is a cruel world, and sometimes, as it does now, my heart sinks within me, as from year to year I struggle on towards a happiness that ever vanishes when I stretch out my hand to clasp it. But if I feel thus, what must you feel? You have so much more to bear. My dearest love, what can I say to you? I can only say, with you, God help us. This letter did not tend to raise Ida's spirits. Evidently her lover saw that there was another side to the question, the side of duty, and was too honest to hide it from her. She had said that she would have nothing to do with Edward Cossey, but she was well aware that the matter was still an open one. What should she do? What ought she to do? Abandon her love, desecrate and defile herself, and save her father and her house, or cling to her love and leave the rest to chance? It was a cruel position, nor did the lapse of time tend to make it less cruel. Her father went about the place pale and melancholy. All his old jovial manner had vanished beneath the pressure of impending ruin. He treated her with studious and old-fashioned courtesy, but she could see that he was bitterly aggrieved by her conduct, and that the anxiety of his position was telling on his health.